One of Stephen King's masterworks is the 1978 novel The Stand. As an infertility expert, I noticed something strange in the recently released 2020 miniseries adaptation. The Stand tells the story of a global pandemic which kills nearly everybody on the planet. I know, weird, right? The novel was published in 1978, long before anyone had ever heard of COVID-19. One by one, we meet a tiny group of survivors who find that they are having the same dreams, featuring two mystical figures. One, who is perceived as good and kind, is Mother Abigail Fremantle. The other is an evil figure known as the Dark Man, or Randall Flagg. One of the survivors is a young woman named Frances Rebecca Goldsmith, who is usually referred to as Fran or Franny. In the book, Franny discovers she is pregnant a few days before the pandemic hits. In the miniseries, she finds out she is pregnant later, after most everybody has been wiped out. The survivors eventually form into groups. The good people are summoned by Mother Abigail to Boulder, Colorado. The evil are called to Las Vegas by the Dark Man. On the way to Boulder, Franny meets and eventually falls in love with another survivor named Stu Redman. The miniseries does not reveal the name of the place where they met, but in the book, it is in a town called Twin Mountain, New Hampshire, which is a real place. Being the good and responsible people they are, the Boulder community sets up a medical clinic complete with its own ultrasound machine. Evidently, there are no surviving obstetricians or ultrasound techs in Boulder, so Franny has her first ultrasound performed by a veterinary technician. We don't know how far along Franny's pregnancy is, but she appears to have some swelling in her abdomen, which suggests that she is more than 12 weeks pregnant. The tech does an abdominal ultrasound, which is usually what is performed when a pregnancy is beyond the first trimester. The first image we see is Franny's uterus. The uterine lining is clearly visible, and within the uterine lining is a gestational sac with a fetus inside. You can see the head, the body, and some early limb buds. Before she moves the ultrasound probe, we also get a brief glimpse of a fluttering heart motion and some movement of the fetus. In the background, the sound of fetal heart tones is heard. Something seems wrong, however, because the fetus is much smaller than would be expected for a second trimester pregnancy.
That's not the baby, is it?
Pretty sure that's your bladder.
Which it clearly is not. The bladder is not located inside the uterus and doesn't generally have a fetus floating in it. After repositioning the ultrasound probe, a second, larger gestational sac comes into view with a clear view of the much more developed fetus, also with movement and flickering heart motion. So Franny has a twin pregnancy. At this moment, both twins are viable, but one is clearly far more developed than the other. Franny goes on to deliver a baby shortly after the Dark Man has been vanquished. But she only delivers one baby. What happened to the twin? I can think of 5 possibilities. Number 1. Blame Captain Trips. The superflu, which is named Captain Trips, is caused by a weaponized virus that is accidentally released from a US military facility. Some viral infections can cause miscarriage or cause birth defects. Even though Franny herself was not affected, the father of the pregnancy, her former boyfriend Jess, was not immune, so the fetus may not have had immunity. In fact, even the surviving twin has a mild case of Captain Trips after being born. It is possible that the smaller twin was underdeveloped and was eventually lost as a result of its susceptibility to the virus. Number 2, the suicide attempt. Early on in episode 1, a depressed Franny attempts suicide by taking a bunch of unknown pills. It is possible that the loss of one twin may have resulted, but this seems unlikely since we know the fetus is still viable months later, although visibly underdeveloped. Number 3, the bomb. Harold Lauder, an increasingly evil resident of Boulder, eventually comes under the influence of the Dark Man. He detonates a bomb hoping to kill the Boulder ruling council and many of the residents. Franny is caught in the explosion and is severely injured. It is possible that she lost the twin at that point, but this wouldn't explain the previous differences in their size and development. Number 4, 2 fetuses, 2 fathers. Normally, when a woman becomes pregnant, she stops ovulating. This prevents her from becoming pregnant with a second fetus when she is already pregnant with one. There are, however, documented cases of a phenomenon called superfecundation, in which ovulation does happen and a separate pregnancy is conceived. This could easily explain why one twin is so much smaller than the other. If this is what happened, then it brings up the question of who the second father is. The most likely candidate, of course, is Stu Redman. We know that Franny and Stu fall in love and eventually become intimate, but we don't know exactly when their sexual relationship started. Another possibility is the Dark Man himself. He is able to impregnate another character, Nadine Cross, whom he intends to have carry and deliver his son. Randall Flagg does have a variety of supernatural powers. In the scene where Nadine is impregnated, it is unclear whether she and Flagg are physically together or if it occurs in a dreamlike otherworld. Other events that happen in this dream world end up having real-world consequences. A Franny twin pregnancy may be one of those consequences. Number 5, the vanishing twin. Since the advent of ultrasound, doctors have seen a relatively common complication of pregnancy. In a twin pregnancy, one twin continues to develop, but the other does not. This second twin may eventually expire and degenerate, or less commonly, be absorbed into the body of the first twin, which is called a parasitic twin. Stephen King has explored this theme before in his novel The Dark Half. In that story, an author, Thad Beaumont, writes violent novels under the pen name George Stark. When the secret identity is revealed, Thad and his wife Elizabeth, who also gave birth to twins, stage a mock burial for his alter ego. Shortly thereafter, a killing spree ensues. The investigating sheriff learns that Thad had an unborn twin who was absorbed into Thad in utero and later removed from his brain when the author was a child. I like this theory since it opens the possibility that Franny's living child could have an evil twin counterpart. This would be in keeping with the central theme of The Stand, which is that good and evil exist in the world, and although you can fight evil and even have some victories over evil, it ultimately can never be eliminated completely. Arguably, the most famous pair of king twins are the Grady twins from The Shining, who are scary but are likely just victims of their alcoholic father. The opening scene of The Dark Tower, which also features Randall Flagg, also shows a set of twin girls. The one thing that bothers me is why there is never any further acknowledgement in the story that Fran has twins. It is hard to imagine that the twin revelation to the audience was not intended, since both Franny and the tech comment about it after it is seen on the ultrasound. It is possible that director Josh Boone intended the twin pregnancy to play a larger role later in the story, but that this was eventually edited out. Infertility TV is your most trusted source for accurate information on infertility and miscarriage. If you are not a subscriber yet, hit that subscribe button right now. A new episode is released every week. Don't miss any episodes. You can also check us out on our website, ivf1.com, where you can become a patient.